morning, everybody. I'm filming from my front porch today. It was raining all morning, clear up until I got ready to film this video, and then the sun came out. So I'm mainly filming from home today because of the fact that it was raining, but now it's not. But I'm all set up, so I'm doing it here. Now we are in Judges chapter 15 today. All right. Now we're right in the middle of the story of Samson. And if you remember in chapter 14, we saw how he put forth a riddle that had to do with the lion that he killed and the honey that was in it and all that. I'm not going to go into the whole story again, but his wife betrayed him. And she is called his wife, even though the wedding actually hadn't been completed yet. The marriage had not been consummated or anything like that. This is in the midst of the 7-day celebration, a week-long wedding celebration. And we're seeing how Samson was a passionate man. All types of lusts controlled him. And he was used mightily by God to punish the Philistines, actually, is what it was. But he was a very ungodly man. And he was out of the will of the Lord in marrying this Philistine woman to begin with. But the riddle that he put forth, she betrayed him, and then he lost his temper over the whole thing. And we saw right at the end of chapter 14 in verses 19 and 20, it said there, "And the Spirit of the Lord came upon him." This would happen. So I want to suggest that maybe it wasn't even that he was like some great big huge muscle man, which is how all the dramatizations of it in films portray him as being this massive bodybuilder type kind of guy. Maybe it wasn't necessarily that. Because when these things would happen and his great strength would be shown, the Spirit of the Lord would come upon him. All right, so it was mainly that, more than his natural physical strength, because he did things that no ordinary human man could do. But it said there that the Spirit of the Lord came upon him, and he went down to Ashkelon, which was a Philistine city at that time on the coast of the Great Sea, and he slew 30 men of them, of the Philistines, and he took their spoil, which was the deal in the riddle. So he was fulfilling the riddle by killing these Philistines. And he took their spoil and gave change of garments unto them which expounded the riddle, which was the deal. That the winner of the riddle would supply these garments to whoever lost. Okay? So since he lost, even though they cheated, he still followed through on what the conditions of the riddle were. And he gave changes of garments unto them which expounded the riddle. And his anger was kindled. Right here, he flew off the handle. He does this all the time. His anger was kindled, and he went up to his father's house. All right? So after he fulfilled the terms of the riddle, he went down to Ashkelon and killed these 30 Philistines. He didn't go back and finish the wedding. He just left. It says that he went up to his father's house. So basically, Samson left her standing at the altar, so to speak. He left. They didn't finish the marriage ceremony. So he went home to his father's house, like to pout or something. All right? And verse 20 said, "But Samson's wife was given to his companion, whom he had used as his friend," because she was getting married there. And then Samson abandoned her, so she was given to the one who was supposed to be like his best man. Okay? Now, going into chapter 15 here, this whole scenario continues here. "But it came to pass within a while after," so a while went by, "in the time of wheat harvest, that Samson visited his wife with a kid." It's calling her his wife. He had never really consummated the marriage, but she was still called his wife because she's the one that was betrothed to him as his wife, even though he never completed it. But it says here that he visited his wife after a while with a kid. And he said, I will go into my wife into the chamber. So he's going back to consummate the marriage now. But her father would not suffer him to go in. All right, now, the kid that it says that he brought was a young goat that was like a peace offering. So he was going there with a peace offering thinking that he's going to take her to dinner. All right, and that's what it was for. He intended to prepare this young kid as a meal for him and his wife. Because it says, I will go into my wife into the chamber. So he was going to go back there with this meal and consummate the marriage. After he just abandoned them completely. All right? Verse 2, and her father said, I verily thought that thou hadst utterly hated her, because he never came back. Therefore I gave her to thy companion. Is not her younger sister fairer than she? Take her, I pray thee, instead of her. So he's trying to appease Samson here, because these people already know that he's a loose cannon. So maybe they're a little bit afraid of him, in a way. That's what it sounds like. So the father was intimidated into offering his other daughter in place of the one that was given to his best man. Take her, I pray thee, instead of her. And Samson said concerning them, now shall I be more blameless than the Philistines, though I do them a displeasure. So he's basically saying that he's gonna get him. And he's gonna be blameless in his eyes. He's just gonna do whatever his passions dictate him to do. Because he's not getting his way, see? He's not getting his way. Now, we have to remember in this whole story that God was using him to punish the Philistines. So, and I talked about this in the last video too, he doesn't always use godly people. He uses whoever he wants. So, the Lord was using Samson's lust, his unbridled passion, and his anger to do his will there in Israel. Isn't that interesting? Let's go on, verse 4. And Samson, in his anger, in his revenge, because he wants to get back at them, because the one that he was supposed to have for a wife had been given to somebody else. See? So even though he's the one that abandoned her there, and I talked about this in the last video too, how they were both in the wrong. Because she betrayed him by giving them the answer to the riddle, which she got out of him. That he was wrong for what he did also. He just left her standing there at the altar and then went back later thinking that he could go ahead and follow through with everything. So Samson basically says that he's going to get back at them. And Samson went and caught 300 foxes. 300 foxes. Foxes are very elusive. It's very difficult to catch one. Which is why the whole basis of the fox hunts that they had over in England, it was because the fox was an elusive animal. It was hard to catch. So it was a real challenge in the fox hunt. But it says here that he went and caught 300 foxes and took firebrands and turned tail to tail. So he would tie them somehow, tail to tail. And the firebrand is like a type of torch. And he put the firebrand in the midst between the two tails. All right? Now, the word that's translated foxes here is the word shual. And that can also be translated as jackals. Okay? So it's not necessarily foxes. Foxes were very hard to catch. It might have been jackals. We don't know. It was translated here as foxes. And when he had set the brands on fire, these torches that he put between their tails, and they were tied together, When he had set the brands on fire, he let them go into the standing corn of the Philistines, and burnt up both the shocks and also the standing corn with the vineyards and olives. Okay? So he destroyed their crops in that particular area there, because the foxes had fire between their tails, so they ran wild into all these crops and everything burnt down. Then the Philistines said, "Who hath done this?" And they answered, "Samson, the son-in-law of the Timnite, because he had taken his wife and given her to his companion." The Timnite is the father of Samson's wife, okay? And he's called the Timnite because they're in Timnath, okay? The son-in-law of the Timnite did it because he had taken his wife and given her to his companion. And the Philistines came up and burnt her and her father with fire. Now, I think this is interesting here because that was what they had originally threatened. When they took her aside and they said, "You find out the answer to the riddle from Samson, or else we're going to burn you and your family with fire." They threatened her that way. Okay, and she did. She went and got the answer out of Samson. She seduced him to give her the answer. And then she betrayed him and went and told the answer to the riddle to the Philistines, okay? So now this is actually happening to her. The Philistines came up and burnt her and her father with fire. So I would assume that they're dead. They came and they killed her because they're looking at it like it's their fault that these crops have been burnt by Samson, who went off on a tangent and lost his temper again. I'm kind of winging it today on this chapter. There's just so many different things. I was trying to make notes, and really there's just so many things to be said that I'm just winging it today. So hopefully this whole thing will be coherent here. So I'm putting this in the Lord's hands here. And He'll direct me to the right things to say here. Verse 7. And Samson said unto them, "Though ye have done this, yet will I be avenged of you, and after that I will cease." Okay, so now he has something else. He's saying he's going to get vengeance on them. And when he's done getting vengeance, then he'll stop. Okay, so he already killed all these Philistines to get their garments to fulfill the terms of the riddle. Then he took these foxes and burnt down all their crops. So then, because that arose out of the situation with his wife seducing him and getting the answer to the riddle and all that, they go and kill her and her family. They burn them up. So now it's his turn to go back against them with something. And every time, his revenge is so much worse than what they did, really. Verse 8. And he smote them, hip and thigh, with a great slaughter. And he went down and dwelt in the top of the rock Etam. All right. Now when it says that he smote them, hip and thigh, that's just kind of a strange expression that they used that meant that it was a cruel, merciless slaughter. He smote them hip and thigh with a great slaughter. It doesn't tell here how many people he killed, but we can assume that it was a lot. And it doesn't say the means that he used in doing it either. Now another thing that I wanted to bring up here is it says that he went down and dwelt in the top of the rock Etam. Now, we don't really know where that was, but it's believed that it's a high place in the rocky hills that were there, and it was like a cave where he went to stay in the top of this rock. All right? There's a few places over there that archaeologists believe that might be the rock of Etam, where Samson hid, but we don't really know the exact spot. All right? But that's where he went to hide. Then the Philistines went up and pitched in Judah and spread themselves in Lehi. Okay? So the Philistines went to Judah and encamped there. And the men of Judah said, "Why are ye come up against us?" They didn't know what was going on. Remember, Samson was a Danite. He was of the tribe of Dan. And they answered, the Philistines, "To bind Samson are we come up, to do to him as he hath done to us." So this whole army of Philistines came and camped in Judah to get Samson, one man. And the men of Judah weren't happy about it, okay? So in verse 11 it says, "Then 3,000 men of Judah, 3,000 of them, went to the top of the rock Etam, where Samson was hiding, and said to Samson, Knowest thou not that the Philistines are rulers over us? What is this that thou hast done unto us? And he said unto them, As they did unto me, so have I done unto them. In other words, they hurt me, so I hurt them back. Samson was a man, like I said, he was a man of unbridled passion in every way. He just allowed his emotions to take control of him and do all these crazy things. But the Lord is using it here. Yeah. He was being used as an instrument of punishment against the Philistines. Verse 12. And they said unto him, these men of Judah, We are come down to bind thee, that we may deliver thee into the hand of the Philistines. And Samson said unto them, Swear unto me that ye will not fall upon me yourselves. So he's going to submit. He's going to let them bind him and take him to the Philistines. Because the people of Judah didn't want war with the Philistines. The Philistines were already more powerful than them, and they were ruling over them at this time. And they spake unto him, saying, No, but we will bind thee fast. They're saying, no, they won't come against him themselves. They just want to hand him over to the Philistines. We will bind thee fast and deliver thee into their hand. But surely we will not kill thee. All right? And they bound him with 2 new cords and brought him up from the rock. Now it says they were new cords. That means they weren't dry. These cords were usually made from some type of plant fiber or something. So it was new cords. It would be hard for them to be broken or anything. So they tied him up and they brought him up from the rock. Now, why did he allow this? Not sure, really, unless he knew what was going to happen. You know, maybe he knew what he was going to do. That's a possibility. Verse 14, And when he came unto Lehi, the Philistines shouted against him, and the Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon him. There it is again. The Spirit of the Lord came upon him. And it would usually say that when he would have these great outbursts of strength. The Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon him, and the cords that were upon his arms became as flax that was burnt with fire, and his bands loosed from off his hands. Now that word translated as loosed there actually is the Hebrew word masas, which means melt or dissolve. The cords melted or dissolved off of him. This would have been something supernatural, it sounds like to me. But the Spirit of the Lord is what gave him the strength, see? That's what I'm saying. It wasn't necessarily that he was so strong that he broke them with his muscles or anything like that. The Spirit of the Lord is what gave him this strength. Verse 15. And he found a new jawbone of an ass. Now, the fact that it says new, that means it's not some old jawbone that's dry and brittle. Okay? It's new. He found a new jawbone of an ass. I guess there was a dead ass laying there. So here, he's violating his Nazirite vow again. Right? He wasn't supposed to come near anything that was dead. He found a new jawbone of an ass and put forth his hand and took it and slew 1,000 men therewith. He killed 1,000 Philistines with the jawbone of an ass. And Samson said, with the jawbone of an ass, heaps upon heaps, with the jaw of an ass have I slain 1,000 men. And it came to pass, when he had made an end of speaking, that he cast away the jawbone out of his hand, and called that place Ramoth Lehi. Now this is interesting here, because what he called it, Ramoth Lehi, means height of a jawbone, or lifting up the jawbone. So this tells you here that this place wasn't always called Lehi, because Ramoth Lehi actually means height of a jawbone. All right. Verse 18. And he was sore athirst after he did this, and called on the Lord and said, Thou hast given this great deliverance into the hand of thy servant, and now shall I die for thirst? Because this area where it happened is like desert land. There's no water there. Shall I die for thirst and fall into the hand of the uncircumcised? The Philistines. But God clave an hollow place that was in the jaw. Now here we get to the word lehi again. God clave an hollow place that was in the jaw. Hebrew for that is the word lehi. And there came water there out, this hollow place. And when he had drunk, his spirit came again, and he revived. Wherefore he called the name thereof En-Hachor, which is in Lehi unto this day. All right, what he called it there, En-Hachor, means the well of him that called or cried. All right? But the word that's translated as jaw there, where it says that God clave an hollow place that was in the jaw, it's not talking about the jawbone of the ass. It's not a hollow place that was made in the jawbone. It's a hollow place that was in Lehi. Because the word that's translated jaw there is the word Lehi, which meant jawbone. You see what I'm saying? So this place is named Lehi, was actually named afterwards. It was after all this happened, obviously, because the name of the place actually meant jawbone. Anyway, let's go on here. Verse 20. Now, this is the end of the chapter here. It says, And he judged Israel in the days of the Philistines 20 years. Okay? He's not done yet. He was actually the judge over Israel during this time. Now, we don't see any of that in his story. His story is just him going around getting revenge on the Philistines for different things and losing his temper. Okay? So it doesn't really tell us a lot about his judgeship. But that's what it says here, that he judged Israel in the days of the Philistines 20 years. Now, there's so many things in this story here. The Lord is using his lustful nature to perform his will. But as far as being a godly man, he was not. He was violating everything that had to do with him being a Nazirite. He had these unbridled passions of lust and anger and revenge. It's all negative stuff, right? And in Galatians chapter 5, verse 24, the Apostle Paul said there that they that are Christ's have crucified the flesh with the affections and lusts, right? This is not a pattern for us to follow at all. We learn a lot from this story, and that God, he's using here Samson's disobedience to do his will. It's an interesting story. And in 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 14, there Paul said, the natural man receiveth not the things of the Spirit of God, for they are foolishness unto him, neither can he know them because they are spiritually discerned. Yeah, the natural man, which is what Samson was. He was not a spiritual man at all. He can't see the things of the Spirit. But the Lord was still using this here. So when the Spirit of the Lord came upon him, it didn't make him a spiritual man where he understood spiritual things or anything. The Spirit of the Lord came upon him to cause him to do what he did. Isn't that interesting? But yeah, because he was a natural man, he was not a spiritual man at all, he didn't receive the things of the Spirit of God. You know, that still stood true back at that time also. He wasn't able to know the Lord in any way. He was just completely ruled by his passions. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, I thank you for this time together with my friends. Lord, I pray that all these things would teach us many things from your word, and that we wouldn't be driven by our passions, and that we would be driven by your Spirit, which dwells within us. I ask that this would be opened up to all those that are listening, and that we would be able to pull many things out of it, Lord. I thank you for all of this, and I ask that those that may be listening that don't know you, that their curiosity would draw them in, and that your Spirit would draw them in. And I thank you for it. I give you all the glory in Jesus' name. Amen. All righty. Samson's story continues. I think it's kind of interesting how at the end of chapter 15 here it said that he judged Israel for 20 years. So it sounds like the story's over, but it's not. Chapter 16, it resumes. And I think that we can all think of things that have happened in our own lives where God used these negative circumstances to bring his will to pass, right? I can certainly see it in my life when times that I made bad decisions. I did these really stupid things and bad things happened. But then in the long run, usually years later, right, you can look back on it and say, wow, look what happened there. Look how God took that circumstance and those bad things that happened, and he used those to his ultimate end. Right? I love you all, and I'll see you later on this week. I'll be back with Judges chapter 16. Bye-bye.